Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and this is Bill.
Today we wanted to have a little bit of a discussion about how the NHS is coping with the virus and how the perception of the NHS is changing in the UK and how we hope that will lead to greater equality worldwide for everybody as we come out of this crisis.
Yes, and what I don't think we've mentioned before on this channel is that Bill actually works for the NHS as a systems administrator. Is that right?
Hero.
Systems hero.
Yeah.
So Bill doesn't work on the NHS frontline. In fact, he's working from home at the moment, but he does work in the IT department.
It's hard because I'm spending a lot of my day just on the phone to people who are on the front line dealing with all of this. They're getting upset and breaking down because they can't access their emails, but it's not because they can't access their emails. We know that.
Because they're overworked, and
it's not. I don't know if it's even that entirely. I mean, it's very easy to say that people on the NHS front line are overworked, underpaid, underappreciated, and all of that is true. But I don't think that's why they're upset, because I'm talking to people all day who are upset because they're seeing people dying.
Yes,
they're there to... Everyone I've spoken to in the NHS, it's a privilege to work for them and with them, is a genuinely selfless person. They're not... the NHS isn't well paid, it isn't glamorous work. They got into it because they love people and want to help people and want to care for people. I'm feeling that so acutely at the moment, and it's so genuine. The way that the nurses I'm talking to feel for their patients, and the way that even as you go up to managers and support staff and people like me, the heart they have for the nurses who are supporting the patients, and so on, and the heart we'll have for the patients at the end of the day as well is really genuine, and it's kind of weirdly emotional working at the moment.
I can't imagine what it's like obviously for the frontline workers at the moment, but it's interesting that it's even affecting you working from home with those frontline staff.
Yeah, it's people who got into the NHS because they wanted to heal people and help people suddenly find themselves in a war zone where people are dying all around them. And that's not what they got into it for, and that's not what they were prepared for, and that's not what they were expecting when they got onto their careers, you know. They didn't expect getting into this that... I don't like the battle language, right? The war language.
No, I don't either.
With the virus, but you apply it to hospitals, and I think it's a reasonable analogy for how frantic it is and the numbers of people that are being affected.
Yes.
To compare the hospital specifically to a wartime hospital. There is nothing else warlike about any of this.
No.
But that comparison, I think, is valid. And none of us expected it, obviously. And so far, this is a funny thing, like, Wales hasn't been hit as hard as the rest of the world, or the rest of the country.
Yeah, even. Especially London and Birmingham.
For a lot of us, there's this kind of sense of...
we'll be fine.
Not even that.
Okay.
We're kind of looking over the edge, you know? Like the roller coaster's just getting to the top, and we're just kind of dreading the next bit. You know, it's happening and people are coming in and out, but the number of actual deaths is still on the low side in this particular part of the world.
Yes.
But we know it's going to ramp up.
Yes. I mean, this is a fairly small town with fairly small hospitals, and it feels very remote. And that's why it's kind of jarring to see things like, you know, them building field hospitals inside university buildings, inside town halls and concert venues and things like that, which is what's happening around here. I think we also need to be very, very careful when we talk about the whole, like, NHS heroes and things like that. And I think you said something similar earlier. You said that people got into this career because they wanted to help people. And I'm sure that's true, but they also don't want this to be sacrifice. They don't want this to be a heroic act. They want this to be a fulfilling job.
What it is, I think, is genuine selflessness, and whatever you personally define a hero as is down to you. But
no, I don't think so.
But you've got people who are selflessly risking their lives to save other people in very difficult circumstances.
Yes. I'm not disputing that. But I don't think the definition of hero is a personal one. I think the definition of hero is very much based on this idea of the hero putting themselves in dangerous situations for the love of humanity and others and nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that we should look at medical staff and frontline NHS workers like that, because that makes it very easy for us to then say, well, the satisfaction of saving lives should be enough for them, that they shouldn't get the security that they need and they shouldn't get the financial safety that they need. Do you know, I think that kind of rhetoric is adjacent to the kind of wartime rhetoric that our government is getting more and more fond of, which makes it very easy for us to just wallow in gratefulness and not actually fight for these people to get proper working rights, safety, and all of that other stuff.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to fight you. Yeah. So, first of all, everyone on the NHS frontline totally is a hero. And I think it's okay to say that and to use that language. We like the clapping, you know. People who work in the NHS, frontline and otherwise, broadly speaking, quite like the clapping. We'd like higher pay, probably more than clapping. We'd like greater respect,
PPE,
support,
testing.
Just the basic things that they need to do their jobs properly.
Yes.
And safely would be definitely better. But don't stop the clapping and don't stop calling people heroes, because that's all fine and good and right. Keep that. I guess we have a realistic understanding of what that is. We know that that's the people in this country doing what they can to show appreciation for our NHS frontline, but the politicians that they've previously voted for aren't doing everything they can, right? So there's a big difference here. If politicians had said, go out and clap for your carers every Thursday, if they'd mandated that from them, I'd be like, sod off, patronising wankers. But they didn't, right? This is the people that have decided to go out and clap, and that's all they can do, right? For the next 5 years. In 5 years, we hope they'll vote for someone who's going to look after the NHS, right? But for now, in this moment, in this crisis, all people can do is go out and clap and yay. And that's what they're doing. And there are other things going on as well, right? So people feeding the NHS and stuff like that is there are campaigns out there that are also very powerful, where it's people showing their appreciation in whatever ways they can, right? Politicians don't need to just match that, they need to exceed that, they need to use the power that they have, because the power that they have is a lot greater than the power that you and I have to support the NHS and give it what it needs.
And yet they haven't even suggested a pay rise.
No, now's not the time to talk about a pay rise.
No, it is.
I know it is. I'm being sarcastic, right? Because that's what they've said about it. It's dumb. Now is exactly the time to talk about a pay rise for the NHS. The reason they don't want to talk about it right now is because they don't want to give NHS staff a pay rise, because they are awful. What I'm seeing this gratitude as being from the people is, because the NHS is a public service, right, and it's publicly run, more gratitude and care for it from the public will lead to more funding, better conditions, better pay.
You are such an optimist. You are so optimistic. You're so hopeful. You really think that the people who are standing out on the doorstep clapping like crazy are going to remember this in 5 years' time at the next election? Do you really think? Or are they going to go back to going...
They don't need to. They don't need to, because policy is decided, in part anyway, on the politicians at the top and the government trying to read the national mood, right?
I don't even think that's true, because the national mood at the moment is... Thank you so much for your selfless service, all of you dying on the front line of this virus, which is entirely preventable if you had proper safety equipment. That is the national mood. What I want the national mood to be is fucking anger and writing emails and bothering the politicians about this, about the issue of pay and the issue of funding in general, because obviously it's not just that the nurses that are there need to be higher paid, it's also that they need to hire more nurses, buy more equipment, hire more of Bill, so that he doesn't have to provide the entire hospital.
I'm making myself as large as I can, and it's not large enough.
That's what's needed now, and maybe this is me being super German and you being super British, and for some reason you have that kind of patriotism in your blood and I don't. But I genuinely think that this national mood, as you call it, is a distraction. It's not a distraction from the conversation we need to be having.
No, bullshit is it? Because we normally just don't have the discussion, right? People go to hospital, they get themselves sorted out, they go home,
and then they complain,
and then they either don't, or they complain, or they just think nothing of it. It's just doing what it does, and you don't think about it. It's all in the background. Now you're thinking about it. Now people are thinking about the NHS, and people are aware not just of the NHS as a big amorphous, hard to comprehend blob that exists vaguely somewhere ethereal that we don't fully understand. They're thinking about how it's made up of people, and people who are working very, very hard. And that's better than normal.
Is it though? Because I know I've always felt, as a foreigner from a country that is based on social health insurance, I've always felt like the NHS is very dear to the British people's hearts. I don't think that this kind of sudden love for the NHS is a new feeling. Let me speak.
I shall allow it.
So I don't think that this is a change in public mood. I think this is just kind of come to the forefront a little bit more. But I always felt like the British people were very proud of their NHS, and yet they somehow have the disconnect in their minds from NHS and where their NHS is funded from, because the people will happily say we are so proud of our NHS and then vote Conservative year after year after year and not see how those things are contradictory.
There's a difference though, because people are very proud of this ethereal ideal of the NHS.
And so they should.
They're very proud of those 3 letters. National Health Service. Very good. They're not proud of the people. They're not thinking about the people who are involved in it. They think like, yeah, I mean, the NHS is all about providing a healthcare service for the people of the country. Yeah, run that on the cheap. As long as you can provide the service we need, yeah, save money while you're at it, cut corners, whatever. And they're okay with that because the service is still being provided. But now they're also thinking about the conditions of the people working in a service that's had these cutbacks. Actually, to be clear, the NHS has not had cuts. Because people will pick on this in the comments. And I'm going to preempt you. The NHS has not suffered any cuts. The cuts have been towards other services like council, mental health, various care services and such like that, which has put additional strain on the NHS, and the additional budget from those places hasn't gone into the NHS to support it. So the NHS has not had cuts, but it also has not had sufficient funding to cope with its increased need because of cuts in other areas.
Yeah, same difference.
The more you know.
But I don't think people previously thought, yeah, we like the NHS, let's run it on the cheap. I think people thought, we like the NHS, it should be better, but please don't tax me more. I think that is the Conservative mentality about it.
I think there's a difference now, and the difference isn't just in the clapping, but it's where the clapping has already led in certain areas. So I'll share with you a story I saw on Twitter, right? There are a bunch of these stories about, it's a small housing area, row of houses, where parking is very difficult outside these houses, and the people found out that one of the people living here is a frontline NHS worker. They painted a parking space for her, and it says reserved for this person who's like our hero or whatever. I can't remember the specifics. And that's really nice. And I think if not for the clapping, these people wouldn't have done that. And there are stories like this all over the place of small to large acts of kindness for NHS workers specifically, and gaining an awareness of who they are and what they go through, and yeah, just looking after your local
and again,
doctors and nurses.
That is very nice, but we'll see if that makes a difference where it matters, which is at the elections. Because I think those kind of acts of kindness, as you call them, they're very, very nice, but they're also incredibly self-indulgent, right? They are. I'm not saying that to devaluate them. It is very nice to clap and to put a parking space and to take food to the hospital and all of those things, but they are very self-indulgent acts. They're to make yourself feel better. No, if you want to really make a difference, then you vote for a government that raises tax, that makes you yourself poorer, that makes you worse off for the betterment of all. And that is putting your money where your mouth is. Is that how the saying goes?
Yeah, but...
And then we'll see if there is a difference. Because what's really missing from this kind of public mood is the kind of rational, civilized anger.
But people vote for other things. They vote for nationalism and all kinds of stupid stuff. I don't think that this is a let's make ourselves feel better while voting to kill the NHS. I don't think people are thinking sufficiently about the NHS when they go and vote. Maybe after this they will do a little bit more. I know someone who works in the NHS and she votes Conservative. She's very proud to vote Tory. She'll post about it, and she thinks voting Tory is good for the NHS because she's got it into her head that the reason the NHS doesn't have the funding it needs is because people are abusing the NHS.
By people, she means foreigners, doesn't she?
Sometimes foreigners and sometimes just poor people calling ambulances when they don't really need ambulances. There's not a way to break through that. Me as one person having an argument with her, it's not going to go anywhere. She's pretty belligerent with this stuff. Where we might see a difference is if more and more people become a bit more thoughtful and research for themselves and try and understand what it's like to work in the NHS and where the problems come from and where the challenges come from, right? In itself, the clapping does nothing, but I think it is genuine. The guy across the road, for example, he's not going out going, he's going out, he's got a wooden spoon in one hand, he's got a pan in the other, and he's going bang, 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 bang for the NHS. I think he means it, I think that guy means it, and I don't think he's doing it to make himself feel good. I think he's doing it because he really does care, and for people like him, that caring might lead to being a bit more thoughtful.
I can only hope so, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a gesture, it's a nice gesture, but gestures don't change shit if people don't follow it up with actual deeds.
Of course, but the gesture spread across the country will make at least some proportion of people follow it up into something else.
I mean, I suppose we'll see at the next election if that's true or not. I wish I had your optimism.
Well, it's not even that. I'm not saying that every single person who's out there clapping is going to be thinking more about the NHS the next time they vote, or thinking about the NHS when they write to their MP. I'm saying that one man, right, outside his house probably will. The guy with the pan. I reckon he will. I reckon the 20 or other so people out on our street won't. But that one guy will. If there are enough people like him out there, it'll just keep the balance just a little bit. And like a virus spreads, that one man will talk to two other people, and those two people will talk to two other people. And the idea that the NHS is in trouble and needs help from politicians, from money, maybe they start to think that it's criminal that you've got hedge fund managers right now making millions out of this crisis while the NHS is struggling
to keep people alive
with very little support. People will think about how criminal that is and how horrible that is, and it will change how they think about the world. It will change how they vote. It won't be everyone going out clapping. It will be 1/20th of them at most, and then it will be them talking to other people. And maybe in 20, 30 years, after enough people have got the message, things will change and things will get better. Maybe quicker, but the best thing that we can do is keep making that argument and keep the gesture going, because for some people that's what they need to really get to thinking about it.
You are so British sometimes. It's like,
well, where is my logic wrong?
It's wrong in that you think that there has been a change in sentiment, and there hasn't been a change in sentiment. Because so far, for example, the Conservatives, they haven't tried to justify their cuts. They've been pretending that there haven't been any. You know, every time that this is brought up, in whether it was at the last election campaign or interviews or anything like that, they've just been saying, we've put more money into the NHS than the last Labour government, or things like that. The rhetoric is going to remain the same, and the dried up money tap is going to remain the same as well.
Yeah, but people can only be fooled by that kind of thing as long as they remain ignorant. What I'm saying is maybe this enthusiasm will lead to a little bit more research?
I don't think so, because that's why I think that this enthusiasm is distracting to the actual cause rather than helpful to it. Because happy people clapping for the NHS aren't going to do their research. And when this crisis is over, they're going to feel good about themselves and not question the rhetoric put forward by the government. And that's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, maybe. But I think what's happening is that some percentage of you is right. Or you're right for some percentage of people, and I'm right for some percentage of people.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I hope you're right, obviously.
Yeah, and the percentage of people you're talking about, whatever it is, are going to stay the same. The percentage of people I'm talking about are going to bring change.
That's if they...
Which means overall, even if I'm right about one person, then we're doing better. Because of the clapping.
We'll see. We will see about that. Yeah, I mean, I want to know what you think, obviously, especially if you also work for the NHS like Bill. Let me know what you think. And I'm standing out there every Thursday clapping as well, okay? I just want to make that clear. Because Bill... What?
Well, you did, yes. You did, like, yesterday.
And last week. The week before that, I was watching TV and I didn't hear the clapping. But what I'm saying is, Bill told me that he finds it very nice. So obviously I'm there clapping because Bill likes it. And hopefully other people will as well. But I'm really hoping there's going to be more than that. I really hope that the clapping, like you said, is just the beginning of a bigger movement.
It's got to lead to something, you know, and that's up to people from then on. Hey, some people will. I think. I just hope it's enough people.
Yeah,
that's the
I hope
thing that
so
we
too.
don't know, right?
Yes.
I think we're agreed that, I think we both understand that some people will be inspired by this to change their ways.
We just hope it's a sizable enough, well...
I think...
It has to make a difference.
You can't really compare the troubles that people are having right now. Some people are finding this incredibly difficult, and other people are also finding this incredibly difficult. That can be for different reasons in different ways. That could be because you're stuck in at home, you don't get to do the things that matter to you. You've been furloughed or laid off entirely from work. But I want to give special love as well to the people who are still working and who are working for minimum wage.
Yeah.
Because I was talking to a friend of mine this morning who's a carer, caring for like old people, and she's an essential worker, working incredibly hard, working nights, and getting paid peanuts to do it.
Yes, and there's a lot of people like that. Obviously, retail workers, basically the kind of people that keep the society going, right? Everyone's talking about, you know, the supermarket workers, binmen, delivery drivers, food delivery services, all of that kind of stuff. And again, I really hope that this crisis is going to make a difference to how we pay those people. It's mostly about pay, let's be honest. But again, I don't think it will.
We need to have a rebalancing of society as a whole, not just the NHS that we've been talking about, but we have an understanding now of who the key workers really are. And take that into your voting booths and take that to your MPs, because these people, they got to be paid more.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see if in 4 or 5 months' time the government is going to go back to calling these people unskilled. Yeah. At the moment, they're key workers. In half a year, they're going to be unskilled. So I think we'll leave it there. It's going to be fun to edit this.
Yeah, I've made it difficult. I always make it difficult. I like to challenge you.
That's okay. Yeah, let us know your opinions. Be respectful.
Vent your spleen respectfully.
Yes. Thank you for watching.
Try it.
Bye.